Elon Musk is a man with a lot on his plate. He runs Tesla, SpaceX, and xAI, three massive companies. Yet he seems to spend most of his time fomenting fascism on X, the Everything app, the platform that he bought. It's this ability to multitask which may have helped him the world's richest man. But he may now have overstretched himself. That's because for the first time ever, Tesla's annual revenue has fallen, and its profits are down 46%. The decline in sales has three main causes. Firstly is Donald Trump, who Musk helped elect, who's cut subsidies for electric vehicle purchases, which raised effective prices for consumers. Secondly, China's BYD has gone global, selling cars which are cheaper than Tesla's, but considered to be matching them in quality. And third, the collapse of Musk's reputation among liberal-minded people, and non-Americans in general, has turned ownership of a Tesla from a symbol that signals virtue to one that signals vice. In response to the decline in car sales, Tesla has announced it will scrap production of two of its models. But Musk has tried to present this not as a retreat, but rather as a pivot into bold new frontiers. Because instead of winding down the factories that produce a Model X and Model S cars, they will be converted to make Optimus robots. Musk says the intention is to make 1 million of these a year. Optimus is a humanoid robot which is designed to autonomously work in factories, warehouses, or in the home, as you can see in this promotional video. They can also catch tennis balls. They are still not for general sale, and previous launches of prototype Optimus robots have been dogged by confusion over the extent to which they are controlled autonomously via AI, or whether they're just controlled by a remote control. But Musk thinks that they're going to be a big deal, as he explained to CNBC last year.
I think humanoid robots will be the biggest product ever. The demand will be insatiable.
You've said that.
Everyone's going to want one. It's like, basically, who wouldn't want their own personal C-3PO R2-D2?
No,
everyone's going to want one.
You've said that, and your goal, you've also said, is to produce 1 million robots, I think by 2030. That's what I had you on the record as saying.
I think that's a reasonable target.
And then start towards sustainable abundance, which you can get into. But I wonder, we've been talking about autonomous and how long it takes to train the automobile to be able to be the equivalent of or exceed human capabilities. But what about these robots, to the extent that how much training are they going to need to actually be able to do various different types of tasks? Isn't that something that's going to take a long time? Yeah.
It's going to take a lot of compute resources, and it'll take time. I think there's certain threshold breakthroughs that we think we can achieve, where if Optimus can watch videos, YouTube videos or how-to videos or whatever, and based on that video, just like a human can, learn how to do that thing, then you really have task extensibility that is dramatic.
So humanoid robots will be the biggest product ever, apparently. To be fair, to me, it looks a little bit more NS5 than C-3PO, to be honest, Elon. You can also see a lot of how this will rest on how quickly they can learn, or be trained, which explains the second part of Musk's pivot this week, which is to invest $2 billion of Tesla's money into xAI, Musk's artificial intelligence company. xAI is, of course, what powers Grog, which is an AI agent famous for spreading Nazi propaganda, undressing women online, and telling users Elon Musk is greater than Jesus. So we'll see what it does with an army of humanoid robots at its disposal. Dahlia, are robots the future and cars the past, or is Elon trying to cover for something here?
Look, there's so many angles here. First of all, I'm often less interested in whether or not technological advances like this are possible. And I'm more interested in what does it tell us about the billionaire and capital owning class that they fantasize about the idea that humans can be replaced by robots. He mentioned there that you could replace essentially workers with robots. And what that tells me is that for these people who currently are running factories and running companies that are powered by human workers, there is this endless frustration that they have that those humans do not behave like robots, because their ultimate fantasy is that those humans that those humans can be replaced by robots. And that's why we see that in the way that not only they organize their workplaces around, if you look at, for example, these Amazon warehouses where we see the post-war labor contract ripped to shreds, and basically workers go in there, they do repetitive, boring tasks, and there's kind of a time limit to how long you can be there before you make enough mistakes that you end up getting fired. And so, it's partly in the way that they organize their workspace, on the basis that to try and push humans towards behaving like robots, but also in the broader sense of basically wanting to absolve all responsibility for anything that makes people human. So this is where you see, for example, attacks on the rights of workers to unionize. Robots don't unionize, so why should human workers unionize? The fact that sometimes workers have to take sick leave, or they want a pension, or they have a family, or they have care responsibilities. We see this fantasy of the robot worker, the non-human worker, infects the way in which these business owners and billionaires construct the ideal worker. It's all about using workplace management, using broader policy in order to push humans to be more like robots.
Whether or not humanoid robots can become useful, it's an open question whether or not they will be affordable, especially if AI has taken all of our jobs. One solution to that conundrum is to hold back AI, to make sure us fleshy humans remain useful. Another is to let the robots do the work, and to redistribute some of those proceeds via a universal basic income. And a universal basic income is now apparently being considered by UK government ministers. Lord Jason Stockwood, who is Britain's investment minister, has told the Financial Times that universal payments could be funded by a windfall levy on tech companies. Stockwood got rich as a high-flying businessman, but it comes from a pretty down-to-earth background. The FT says this. Unlike the privileged backgrounds of many in the House of Lords, Stockwood grew up on a council estate in Grimsby, not knowing his father and watching his single mother take every job going, including as a debt collector and shifts on the docks, where he also worked as an 18-year-old labourer. And that background appears to have given him an interest in tackling inequality. He told the FT this also. I think the productivity gains and the wealth that AI can create, but we also need to think of the more pernicious and near-term danger that it just embeds inequality and makes a really small cohort of super wealthy elites even wealthier because they control the capital and the technologies. That's a very good point. Whether the government will put it into practice is a very different question. And we don't have to look far for other businessmen who talk a good talk on UBI, but act very different in practice.
We've updated the Tesla mission to amazing abundance, and this is intended to send a message of optimism about the future. I think we're most likely headed to an exciting, amazing era of abundance, and I think with the advent or with the continued growth of AI and robotics, I think we actually are headed to a future of universal high income, not universal basic income, but universal high income. I mean, there's going to be a lot of change along the way, but that is what I see as the most likely outcome. So I think that it makes sense to update Tesla's mission to reflect that goal.
That was Elon Musk speaking to Tesla investors on an earnings call on Wednesday. Dahlia, do you believe him?
I mean, I don't believe that the man who was behind Doge, which cut millions and millions from the federal budget for everything from social security to education, has any kind of sincere belief in what was it? Sustainable abundance or whatever it was. I mean, it is laughable, because it's like, if that's what you really believe, then why would you pull the rug from under the feet of people who rely on the current model of security infrastructure, welfare infrastructure, if that's what you believe, if you believe that everyone has a right to a dignified, abundant life. And, when it comes to the kind of the question of UBI and the question of automation, I mean, the most progressive version of this promise is this idea that what we would call kind of drudgerous work or dangerous work could be taken on by these humanoid robots, and freeing people up basically to engage more in their creative outputs, or in work that they find meaningful, and in work that is, that makes you feel more human, not less human. And UBI is a really important part of that, because as it stands now, at least within that transition, work as it currently exists is likely to be transformed. But I think the problem is I don't think that the transformation of work as a result of AI is necessary, or of robotics, is going to necessarily mean the loss of jobs. I think what it's going to lead to is the enshittification of jobs. So what we're going to have is not necessarily that, if you are an accountant, for example, that all of these jobs are going to be, or there's going to be no more human accountancy jobs. It's that those accountancy jobs are going to be basically machine checking. It's going to be more boring, more isolating, and most importantly, something which so de-skilled that the humans that do it become endlessly replaceable. So what we see is this kind of Hunger Games style economy where there's still jobs remaining, but the humans that are attached to that job are not considered to be, let's say, assets that you invest in, that you want to hold on to, but rather that you cycle through and become essentially quite disposable.
It is kind of sad, really, that the first things to go when it comes to AI will be creativity, which is what's so kind of dystopian about it for me. Like Geoffrey Hinton, who's known as the godfather of AI, we covered him on the show a few months back now, talking about how the real solution to the problems of AI is socialism, i.e., further to what Lord Stockwood was saying, which was that, well, if you own the capital, all the productivity gains will filter up to you rather than to everybody else. But rather than levying a tax on them to be able to then redistribute that as universal basic income, we need social ownership of all of these machines that help create those productivity gains, right? If we want these productivity gains to be spread out equally across society, there has to be an equal ownership stake in the capital that creates those productivity gains. And that, as far as I'm concerned, is the best way to be able to make sure that we don't see the kind of dramatic wealth inequality that will happen if AI is allowed to go untethered, which I think is a more long-term and sustainable solution than just having universal basic income and then just fingers crossed hoping that some bought-out government later on down the line will reverse that in due course.